You know the feeling. Someone smiles at you and something in your chest loosens. The tension you didn't know you were carrying just drops. You share more than you plan to. You relax your guard without deciding to. You trust, and you don't even notice you've done it. Then weeks later, something happens. A comment gets back to you. A decision is made that you weren't told about. A version of something you said in private shows up somewhere it was never supposed to be. You sit with it, trying to identify the moment of betrayal. But the moment never comes into focus. Because the person who did it never stopped smiling. This is not a rare experience. It happens in offices and families and friendships. It happens between people who have known each other for years. And the reason it keeps catching careful people off guard is that we are trained from childhood to read warmth as safety. To associate a smile with kindness. With someone who means us well. Nietzsche saw this training as one of the most dangerous things about how human beings relate to each other. He called it the problem of the mask. There is something worth pausing on here. The mask, in Nietzsche's framework, is not always a deliberate construction. It is not always the result of a calculated decision to deceive. In many cases, the mask grows slowly, shaped by years of social learning, by the discovery that warmth opens doors that force cannot, that pleasantness disarms people in ways that directness never could. By the time a person has learned this fully, the mask and the face have become difficult to separate. Even the person wearing it may no longer know where one ends and the other begins. This is what makes Nietzsche's warning so unsettling. It is not a warning about liars. It is a warning about something more ordinary and more pervasive than lying. If this is already landing, hit subscribe and tell us in the comments where in the world you're watching from today. Friedrich Nietzsche spent his life distrusting surfaces. Not out of cynicism, but because he believed the most important truths about a person are never the ones they show you first. In Beyond Good and Evil, he wrote that every profound spirit needs a mask, and that around every deep thinker, a mask is constantly growing. The outer face, the performed warmth, these are not always lies. But they are not always the truth either. And the person who cannot tell the difference will keep getting hurt by it. Nietzsche was specifically interested in a category of person capable of great concealment. The one whose pleasantness feels genuine because it is practiced so thoroughly it has become second nature. He saw this not as a personal failing but as a social technology, something people develop when direct power is unavailable to them. They cannot take what they want by force or open competition, so they take it through access. Through closeness. Through the slow accumulation of your trust. The warmth is not manufactured from nothing. In many cases it is real. These people genuinely like the people they are using. The two things coexist without contradiction. This is what makes the pattern so hard to see and so hard to name after the fact. You were not wrong to feel the warmth. The warmth was there. It just was not the whole picture. Point 1. The smile is not evidence of safety. It is evidence of investment. When someone is consistently warm, consistently agreeable, consistently light in your presence, your nervous system registers this as evidence of no threat. This is the correct biological reading in most cases. But Nietzsche's warning is about the minority of cases where consistent warmth is the result of consistent calculation. His concept of the will to power is not about violence or crude domination. It is the drive to expand, to assert one's existence against the resistance of the world. Every person has it. The question Nietzsche posed is what form does it take in someone who has learned that open competition is too risky? It looks like warmth. It looks like the person who always remembers your birthday, who checks in when you are struggling, who makes you feel seen in the small moments. These behaviors are not inherently calculated. But in the person Nietzsche was describing, they are investments. And investments are made because a return is expected. Think about the people in your life who are pleasant with everyone, who never seem to have enemies. Genuine goodness exists. But Nietzsche's question is worth sitting with. Does this person's warmth cost them anything? Real warmth has texture. It includes the moments of friction, the honest disagreement, the times when someone tells you something you did not want to hear because they care more about your well-being than your comfort. The smile that never falters, the agreeableness that never cracks, that is not intimacy. That is performance. Point 2. Agreeableness is not kindness. It is often its opposite. Nietzsche had a sharp critique of what he called herd morality, the compulsive agreeableness of people who have decided that keeping the peace is more important than being honest. He saw this not as gentleness but as cowardice wearing gentleness as a costume. The person who always agrees with you is not your ally. They are your mirror. And mirrors do not warn you when you are about to walk into a wall. You have probably experienced this. Someone warm and consistently positive who never once told you that your plan had a flaw, that your reading of a situation was off, that the path you were on was going to cost you. They smiled and nodded. And later, when the thing collapsed, they expressed sympathy. Neither the confidence nor the sympathy was dishonest. But the silence was. That specific absence of the harder truth was the actual shape of what they gave you. Nietzsche believed genuine care sometimes requires the courage to disturb someone. A person who genuinely values you will, at some point, say something that makes the conversation harder. They will push back. They will name a risk you have not considered. They sit in the discomfort of introducing friction because they care more about what is true than about being liked in the moment. The person who never does this is not being kind. They are being safe. The smile is a shield, not a gift. Point 3. The most dangerous thing about the pleasant person is that they are gathering information. Most people do not frame their conversations in terms of information transfer. You are talking. You are connecting. You are sharing. But the person across from you who is warm and attentive and asking the right gentle questions is, whether they know it or not, building a picture. Nietzsche observed that knowledge is a form of leverage. To know someone's fears, ambitions, insecurities, private situation, is to hold a tool that can be used. Not always intentionally, not always maliciously, but available. Consider how this works in practice. You are slightly vulnerable one afternoon. Something at work has gone wrong, or a relationship is strained. The warm person is there. They create the conditions for you to speak freely. They do not push. They simply remain open, present. And you fill the silence. Weeks later, in a different context, where your interests and theirs no longer align as cleanly, that information is there. A well-timed observation. A comment that quietly undermines your credibility in a moment when defending yourself would only make you look defensive. The smile never went anywhere. The warmth is still there. And you are left with the unsettling feeling that something happened without being able to say exactly what. There is a particular cruelty in this mechanism that Nietzsche understood clearly. When someone uses force against you, you can be angry. The injury is visible and the source is identifiable. But when someone uses your own openness against you, the first emotion is rarely anger. It is confusion, then self-doubt. You begin to wonder whether you misread the situation, whether you are being unfair to someone who was only ever kind to you. That self-doubt is not accidental. It is the mechanism working exactly as designed. The warmth that preceded the injury functions as insurance against your own accurate perception of what happened. Point 4. People who never express negativity are suppressing something. And what is suppressed does not disappear. On the genealogy of morality, Nietzsche argued that emotions which cannot be expressed outwardly do not dissolve. They turn inward and find indirect routes out. He called this ressentiment, the psychological state of a person who cannot openly express hostility or envy, so instead transforms those feelings into something that looks righteous, measured, and concerned. The consistently pleasant person is not someone without anger or competitive drive. They are someone who has learned not to show it. And this suppression has a cost for the people around them. You never know when the pressure has built to the point of release, or what form the release will take. If this video is giving you something to think about, subscribe and turn on notifications. It helps us keep making content like this. The blunt, irritable person is easier to navigate. They show you their friction points. You know what is bothering them. The consistently pleasant person gives you none of this. Every surface is managed. And when the thing finally comes, it arrives without warning, in a form that cannot easily be attributed to them. A rumor that cannot be traced. A shifted alliance arranged quietly. A decision made in a room you were not in, by someone who was, until yesterday, your warmest supporter. Nietzsche did not say happy people are dangerous. He said performed happiness conceals a will, and the concealed will does not share its intentions until it is ready. Point 5. The smile works as a weapon precisely because you are not allowed to name it. When someone harms you through open aggression, you have language for it. You can point to it. But when someone harms you through warmth, through the slow extraction of trust, you have almost nothing to point to. Every data point is deniable. They were friendly. They asked how you were doing. They smiled. Nietzsche observed that in any social structure, the person who successfully occupies the position of the warm and well-liked acquires a kind of immunity. To accuse them is to appear paranoid. To pull back is to appear cold, ungrateful, difficult. The social cost of naming what they are doing falls entirely on you, not on them. The consistently pleasant person has often learned exactly this through experience. Warmth is armor. The smile functions as a preemptive defense against accusation. Build your reputation on enough genuine warmth toward enough different people, and the one person who sees the other side will always look like the unreliable witness. You have probably been the unreliable witness at least once. You saw something that did not match the person's reputation, and the response you got was the gentle implication that you were misreading. The smile had already done its work. Nietzsche's answer was not to become suspicious of everyone who is pleasant. His answer was to develop what he called the pathos of distance. A clear-eyed recognition that presentation and character are not the same thing, and that confusing the two is a trap people fall into because they need to believe that warmth means safety. Point 6. The most telling moment is not how someone smiles at you. It is how they speak about others when those people are not present. If someone is unfailingly warm to your face but speaks about other people with a carefully placed edge, with commentary that is technically neutral but leaves a residue, you are watching the instrument used on someone else. You are not special. The instrument does not have exceptions. Watch specifically for the compliment that contains a wound. The observation that appears to defend someone while quietly making them smaller. The expression of concern that functions as a verdict. This is ressentiment in practice. Competitive feeling transformed into something that can be expressed publicly without triggering a response, because it does not look like what it is. The person who does this in your presence will do it in your absence. The only variable is how much material you have given them. And the warmth, the attentiveness, the feeling of being genuinely seen, that is precisely what loosens the material free. Now comes the part that is harder to hear. Nietzsche's warning about dangerous pleasantness is not only a warning about other people. It is also, if you are honest, a warning about yourself. There have been moments when you were pleasant not because you felt it but because you were protecting something. When you smiled at someone you did not trust because naming the distrust would have cost more than hiding it. When you kept the conversation warm because you needed access to the room. When you withheld the honest reaction because the honest reaction would have made you inconvenient, and you could not afford to be inconvenient just then. Nietzsche was not moralistic about this. He observed it as a feature of the will to power that every person carries. You are not a villain when you smile strategically. You are a person navigating a world that rewards certain performances and punishes certain transparencies. But here is what he would ask you to do with that recognition. Not to feel guilty. Not to perform some radical honesty that makes you unnavigable. But to close the distance between what you present and what you actually think. To notice the moments when the smile is a substitute for a harder, truer word. To ask what it would cost you to say it. And to begin, slowly, to pay that cost more often. Because the alternative is a life lived behind a surface that eventually you stop being able to see past yourself. The dangerous smiler has power over you only as long as the smile is what you are reading. When you learn to read the will behind it, the warmth stops being a trap. It becomes information. And information, held clearly with no illusions attached, is how you move through a social world without being consumed by it. He wrote in Beyond Good and Evil that the falseness of a judgment is not necessarily an objection to it. What it means here is that the pleasant person's warmth is not purely false simply because it is strategic. The warmth and the calculation coexist. The smile is real and it is also an instrument. Both things are true at the same time. What changes when you hold both truths together is not your feeling toward the person. You may still enjoy their company. What changes is your relationship to your own openness. You stop treating warmth as evidence of safety. You start treating it as one data point among many. You look, as Nietzsche looked, for the thing underneath. What is being protected? What is being sought? What the smile is actually for. This is not paranoia. Paranoia is the attribution of threat to everything. This is discernment. The recognition that presentation and character occupy different registers, that a person can be genuinely pleasant and also quietly competitive, that warmth and motive can share a face without either one canceling the other. The people who understood Nietzsche's warning and took it seriously were not the ones who became cold or closed or difficult to reach. They were the ones who became harder to mislead. They kept their own warmth. They did not armor themselves in suspicion, but they stopped confusing how someone made them feel in a conversation for evidence of what that person actually was. That distinction, small as it sounds, is the entire difference between a person who keeps getting hurt by the same pattern and a person who finally stops. Some people will always smile at you for reasons that have nothing to do with your well-being. Nietzsche's answer was not to stop trusting people. It was to stop trusting the surface. To look past the performed warmth to what someone does in the dark, what they say when you are not in the room, where their loyalty actually sits when showing it costs them something. The warmest person in the room is not necessarily the safest. The safest person is the one whose warmth matches their behavior when no one is watching. Thank you for watching. More videos are on your screen now, and if you haven't already, subscribe. We'll see you in the next one.